everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Deep Thoughts. And today we are talking about Vinland Saga episode 13, The Hero's Child. But before we get into it, I do want to say a quick thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter, namely at Saxy23 and at Nacho Gashardo. Thanks so much for sharing last week's video, you two, and if you would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Vinland Saga video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's Vinland Saga video. Now with that said, my friends, we are into the second core of Vinland Saga. You can tell because we got ourselves a new ED and new OP, in particular a new OP, which was freaking dope, but we'll get to it. There are two things in particular I want to talk about before we get to that though. I want to talk about the big negotiation scene, which leads to a metric ton of reveals, and also I want to talk about the, shall we say, Beauty and the Beast-like dynamic between Thorfinn and Kenneth. In fact, we're going to go ahead and start there because the whole negotiation thing really needs more time to kind of simmer for me for a little bit because a lot happened. So we're going to go ahead and talk about something fun. Before we do that, we're going to talk about the Beauty and Beast dynamic that is Thorfinn and Prince Kenneth, or should I say princess. The whole Thorfinn calling the prince princess is, you know, it's vaguely rude, but at the same time, it's also kind of funny. So, and you know, it's pleasant banter between the two. I'm actually pretty down for it. I think it's fun, and it really brought out the prince's like need to stand up for himself, which like friggin' finally. Because when it comes to the prince and Ragnar, honestly, the pair of them were really getting on my last nerve by this point. Not because like, again, it's not a like how poorly written, it's how frustratingly well written these two are that they just drive me insane. Thankfully, Prince Canute, I always forget how it's pronounced, much like Ashlad/Ashglad. But the prince, the young princeling, his silence drives me insane, and his constant need to hide behind Ragnar, it makes for such a weak king. And with Ragnar, like, listen, I get it. You know, like, he sees this kid as his own, right? He took this kid, he helped raise this kid, so of course he's going to be very, not controlling, but very protective of the prince. I understand. But he babies this kid way too much. Like, I have met people like these two. I have met Ragnar and Prince Kenneth. Like, I have met parents who treat their kid in this exact same way, who just baby the ever-living hell out of their kid. And honestly, they never grow a spine. And if things continued the way that they were, that is exactly what would have happened. The prince would have just continued to be this young princeling, too afraid to say anything for fear of some sort of political backlash or fear of getting in trouble or just fear of speaking in general. And again, I get it. It's a scary world they live in. But at the same time, because it's a scary world, you need to let the bird fly out of the nest if it's ever going to survive. So with Ragnar and the prince, you have this sort of dynamic where they care about each other, but almost to a detriment for each other. Like, the prince obviously relies on Ragnar and cares for him a great deal, but that's become his crutch, and he always hides behind Ragnar when stuff goes down. And with Ragnar, he cares about the prince a great deal. He obviously truly cares about the prince, but because of that, he's become so protective of him, he won't let him grow. He's actually stunting his growth. And it's interesting that they bring this up, and I thought that really added an extra layer to the two that genuinely kind of made me rethink how I felt about them, because again, at first I was like, oh, these two drive me insane, but it's really well written, so I can't even be upset. It's like, oh, dang it! Gratianus even points this out himself, and Gratianus is slowly becoming one of my favorite of the side characters, although Bjorn is still always going to be my boy. But Gratianus even points the same thing out. Like, if he never, like, he speaks for the prince, and if he never lets that bird out of the nest, it's not gonna end well. And like, Ashlad, you're putting your trust in this kid. Like, telling Askelad, like, listen, man, like, you are gonna be in trouble if this kid doesn't grow, and you better do something about that quick, meaning, like, we ain't gonna have Ragnar around for very much longer, I don't think. Which kind of sucks, because again, like, on one hand, he frustrates the ever-living hell out of me, but if anything happened to the prince or Ragnar, I'd be upset. Like, they drive me crazy, but, like, I get why they're doing what they're doing. I would be emotional if something happened to them, and I do think by the conversation between Gratianus and Ashlad, like, something's gonna happen soon. But the Beauty and Beast dynamic thing really comes into play when the prince actually manages to stand up for himself when Thorfinn continues to call him princess and loser. And honestly, I was sort of with Thorfinn for a good deal of that, because it's like, yeah, you are a loser. Like, you're supposed to be a prince? The hell's the matter with you? And when he's like, you don't know what the prince has been through, all I could think of was Rocket screaming like, everybody's got dead people. Because yeah, Rocket's right. Everybody's got dead people. Everybody has trauma. I get it. It sucks. But you're the prince. You gotta have some kind of spine. And it finally comes out, and the prince like finally standing up for himself had me going like, yes! Even though you're wrong, but yes! The prince is a coward. He needs to admit that he has been cowardly, but that doesn't mean that he is forever a coward, and I look forward to him growing alongside Thorfinn. Maybe Thorfinn have like bringing out the more confident side in the prince, and the prince bringing out the more gentle side in Thorfinn, because we know that both of these sides clearly exist within each other, and maybe they can help bring that out. And yeah, I like the whole like Beauty Beast dynamic. Doesn't have to be shippy, and I don't really ship it as more of a bro thing, but you know, it's there. And now we gotta talk about the big negotiation scene where we get a mountain of new information on a character who we've known for quite some time, that being Ashlad. And when the episode began, I remember thinking like, man, is that Thorfinn? Is that Thorfinn's mom? What's going on? And then once we get to the negotiation scene, you realize that was not Thorfinn, that was Ashlad and his mom, Lydia, I believe. And that was a shock, because young Ashlad and our current Thorfinn look really similar. Like, I genuinely was like, whoa, they look really similar. And not in like a, oh, like, are they related kind of way. Just like the fire in the eyes, the hair, the way that they held each character holds themselves up. They really seem similar, and it really like kind of hammers home that Thorfinn and Ashlad are kind of becoming like two sides of the same coin. Like they really, or not two sides of the same coin, but they really are becoming, or Thorfinn rather, is very much becoming a lot like Asklad. And Asklad, man, everybody else is playing checkers. He's playing chess. He's playing like 3D chess. He's just on a whole other level. I knew something was up. And if you've been watching the Vinland Saga videos, you'll know that I've thought something was up for quite some time. But I was not aware that it was to this extent. Like, Ashlad is not just some dude he's not just some dude leading the Danes. He's not just like some guy from Denmark, I believe that Bjorn said he thought he was from. It's actually that he is the ancestor of Artorius, who, yeah, if you missed it, is the man who the myth of King Arthur is based on. Now, with that said, I need to admit something to you guys. I was a big history kid when I was in school. History was one of my favorite classes, but my teacher had like specific time periods that we would focus on, and honestly, a lot of Vinland Saga, a lot of like Viking era stuff, a lot of like the Wales, Denmark, all this stuff, way out of my depth. I do not know very much about what is happening. It's just not where I'm familiar with in terms of history. So I don't know how, like, quote unquote accurate any of this is, if it is at all. I'm assuming Ashlad's a made up character, but the myth of Artorius, I was like familiar enough with it. All that is to say that there was parts of the episode that I kind of wanted to pause and then jump to Google and type in some history knowledge. And I gotta say, the mere fact that I felt compelled to look up facts about this time period in history makes me wonder if some history class won't be watching Vinland Saga in the future, just because it actually genuinely got me curious about this time period. And Ashlad is a character too. Ashlad, like I said for the longest time, there's a lot more to this dude than we knew. And I'm sure manga readers are like, "Mwahaha, we been knew." But us anime onlys, even though we didn't know, we always, like, I assume everybody watching who's like me, who's an anime only, knew on some level Ashlad is playing a long con. But I didn't expect it to be to this scale where he's like, no. I am descended from Artorias. I want to make sure that Wales is safe, and I hate the Danes. I was like, what? What did he just say? What is happening? That was mind-blowing. I genuinely was like, holy... And Bjorn and the blonde dude are like sticking up for him where they need to, where like people are like, oh, I don't know, Ashlad seems like he's not himself anymore, or like, oh man, we keep doing different stuff, Ashlad can't make up his mind. And it's like, no, they're standing up for him, but meanwhile, Ashlad doesn't even care about his boys. Like, that is some mind-bendy stuff. That was quite the twist. And very quickly, I want to talk about the new OP and ED because, hey, it's a new core, we need a new OP and ED. The new ED has an amazing song. I think it fits totally well, but the ED itself is kind of not good because it's just reused clips from the show and it's not in any particular order other than the fact that we see the Valkyries at the beginning of the ED and the ending of the ED. And so that's kind of all my thoughts on the ED. I just think it's a great song that fits, but the visuals are really lacking. As for the OP, I freaking love it. You can put Man with a Mission in just about any opening with just about any visuals, and the odds are I'm gonna like make excuses if the visuals are bad just because Man with a freaking Mission is doing the song. And yep, surprise, I liked it. Do I like it as much as the first opening though? I don't know, because Man with a Mission versus Survive Said the Prophet is a argument that I don't want to have with myself, so I'm not even gonna go ahead and broach the topic. I do wonder too if the OP is almost like vaguely spoilery, because it shows some stuff that I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I wanted to see that in the OP. I mean, I kind of figured that would happen, but like, ooh, I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter, it's in the opening now, so I'm just gonna have to deal with it. But yeah, Man with a Mission, they're great. But with that said, everybody, that's gonna wrap up my thoughts. I honestly thought that this was a solid A-tier episode. It's another good time with Vinland Saga, a great time, in fact. I really love this show. On that note, everybody, that just about wraps everything up. But before we go, as always, I want to give a big shout out to the good folks over on Patreon, namely those in the Earl Grey tier. Calvin Atkinson, Crowbar of Irony, Dominic, Urza, Ginkotaku, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Mirth Mouser, Omna Garamond, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Steven, Tristan, and Verdon. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon, and hey, if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then by all means go ahead and check out that first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get for as little as $1 a month, and get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. But on that note, everybody, that's going to be a video, so I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, you've probably been on the internet long enough to know what to do already, so I ain't going to tell you, but I will say that it is appreciated, and if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.